Hey, what's going on out there? Welcome to the first live episode of Jets Talk here with the Umbro Brothers, if you will. I'm Big Brother Mike, also the host of the show. You're here also with little bro Nick. Nick, how's everything going today?
It's going well. Here to talk about the Jets and ready to get this thing going.
Hey, man, the same old or the fucking or the darn old or however you want to call them Jets. Anyway, so we're going to kick this thing off. I know we're kind of starting this thing halfway through the season, but there hasn't been as much to talk about outside of Trevor Lawrence and Adam Gase and the fact that the Jets continue to tank. We're going to kick this thing off, though, with which was actually a really cool game to watch between the Jets and the Pats. Joe Flacco coming out of nowhere, throwing dimes all over the place, dissecting the defense of the New England Patriots, which is more than typically on point. Obviously, things have changed a little bit this year, but even still, I haven't seen a Jets offense play like that since the middle of last year.
No, same.
So Flacco comes out, throws 3 TDs. Rashad Perriman decides to come and play last night. Denzel Mims continues to improve in the receiving game. Jets are putting up points, but the Patriots and Cam Newton came out and never really went away from the game plan. They stayed true to who they were as an offense. It kind of seems like they're starting to gel. Basically, the Jets had this game in the bag up until Joe Flacco basically blew it in the fourth quarter with that ridiculous pick. And then from there, just penalties and, the same old Jets out of the blue in the fourth quarter all over again. Patriots come back to win 30-27 as time expires off ironically, a Nick Folk field goal. It was one of those things where it's like, oh my God, but then what was I thinking? What did I expect? So Nick, why don't you go ahead and give me 3 takeaways from last night's game and what stood out to you the most?
Yeah. So listen, one of the takeaways, like you just said, they scored points. I don't think we've seen a Jets offense yet out of the 9 games this year that have scored more than 20 points in a game. Last night was an example of that, and that just goes to show you that I don't think Sam Darnold is the answer here in New York. But I'm impressed by the offense. Joe Flacco really just went out there and balled and really didn't care what anybody thought. He was just going to go out there and do his thing against a pretty good Pats defense. That was nice to see. Coming down the stretch, seeing the Jets lead by 10, us Jets fans were on our toes knowing that, hey, it's the Jets. Anything could happen. So watching that 10-point lead quickly deteriorate was just the good old-fashioned Jets that we don't like to see. So they just got to do a better job of executing down the stretch, especially when the rare occasion is when they do have a lead in the game. They need to close it out. Sam Darnold, Joe Flacco, whoever the quarterback is, James Morgan, if we get to him, they need to do a better job of closing it out. They have a lead. My third point is just Sam Darnold is not it. The fact that Joe Flacco was able to operate as a backup QB at almost 40 years old and almost threw for 300 yards against the Patriots defense just goes to show you that we do have a few weapons here in New York. Denzel Mims, he's coming out of the gate. Now that he's healthy, he's looking good. Michael Pirine, he's fresh. He looks good as a rookie too. We do have a few weapons that just need to get going. It all starts at the top. Adam Gase needs to go. We should keep him until we just win a game and then fire him. And then that's just it. But yeah, those are my takeaways from last night's game. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, so I can definitely agree with you, Nick, on the fact that there are a few weapons in place. This is actually the first game last night where we've been able to see Perriman, Mims, and Crowder on the field at the same time, which obviously gives a different look to defenses. Receivers are playing much faster. They're able to get down the field. And as long as the quarterback is able to, get at least 2 seconds to hold the ball and find these guys, you can see the ball being delivered. So listen, I agree. Do I still think that the roster is complete a receiver?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Rashad Perriman decided to ball for the first time all year. Granted, he's been hurt. But he has been very inconsistent throughout his career. That's something we knew when we brought him on from his days at the Buccaneers, his days at the Ravens. And you could also see that Joe Flacco and Perriman picked up where they left off when they were at Baltimore.
Yeah.
So my 3 takeaways are going to be, first and foremost, you mentioned Denzel Mims. I love this kid. I think he's going to be a stud. We don't have the pieces around him just yet. We don't have the quarterback throwing him the ball as consistently as we'd like. This is actually the most amount of targets we've seen him get thus far, coming off an injury, really only been in the game plan for 3 weeks. He's showing up, he's making plays, he's snatching the ball out of the air, he's making guys miss at his size in traffic. To me, that's just so impressive. Big Denzel Mims fan.
Yeah.
Takeaway number 2 for me was the defensive line. Now, granted, the defense has a lot of flaws. The back end is young. They're 100% inexperienced. Pierre Desir is hot garbage. There was one play where Pierre Desir let that dude Bird just catch the ball, 5-yard cushion. And then instead of trying to make the tackle, he let Bird cut all the way across field and almost score, which to me was just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, where's your fire? Try to make the tackle. Like, don't give up. You have a bad secondary, but, the defensive line overall, I think they did a really nice job of stuffing the run. I do think they put a lot of pressure on Cam last night. My one big thing with the D line and, the pass rush in particular, they can't finish. They're in position to sack Cam Newton quite a few times last night, and they just couldn't finish. There was a play where Cam slipped to the same guy twice in the pocket and made an absolute awesome play to that guy Bird once again. And really just, he made the D line as good as they looked against the run. He made them look silly when it was time to rush the passer.
I could be wrong, but I do think we are top 5 in the league in, rushing the quarterback and hits with penalties. I think we are roughing the passer constantly. I think we're top 5 in the league. And that just goes to show you the lack of discipline in this defense. We do have good pieces in this defense, but they just need to stay disciplined.
They need to stay disciplined. That's on coaching, though. That's Greg Williams. And not for nothing. I mean, listen, Quinnen Williams wasn't playing last night. Had he been in the lineup, there was definitely a chance we could have seen Cam Newton hit the ground more than once, which is actually going to lead to my 3rd takeaway. Ashton Davis. The improvement I saw from that kid from last week in Kansas City, Tyreek Hill made him look like a rookie. There was no secret about it. But then he came back and made – what's that?
He's exciting to watch for sure.
He is. He's a very physical player. He flies around the field. There were a few plays last night in pass breakups. Obviously, the one big play was the penalty where he sacked Cam Newton. Don't get me started. That was not a penalty. That was a clean hit. Cam just got hit hard. And you know what? I love the physicality. I'm not going to blame Ashton Davis for that penalty because it was just a bad call. But Ashton Davis showed me last night something that Jamal Adams struggled with in New York. As good as Jamal Adams was in the box, he was a little bit of a liability in pass coverage more often than not, which is ultimately why I liked the trade that Joe Douglas made prior to the season, where we accumulated 2 first-round draft picks for this coming draft and the following. But he made a lot of plays in the back end last night, pass breakups, always around the ball, flying around the field. You can tell he's just comfortable now, and he just needs more reps to get more comfortable. And, the more loose he plays, the better of a player he is. You can see that just from watching him. So overall, I think Ashton Davis played well, the D-line played well, and Denzel Mims is an up-and-comer. 2 of my 3 takeaways were about rookies. So it's actually going to lead into our next little piece here in regards to what rookies we do like. Nick, I'll give you the floor. Give me a rookie or 2 that you can see as a part of this Jets organization and part of the core moving forward into 2021.
Yeah. Going back to, like we said before, we scored 27 points last night. And that was even without Mekhi Becton. He's a big part of this offense. He is a brick wall I think once we get him healthy, I think we get another few pieces around him on the O-line. We have a chance to do something and actually go score touchdowns instead of putting up 3 points here and there. So I'm a huge Mekhi Becton fan, and then I'm also a huge Ashton Davis fan. Coming in, he's kind of somewhat filling the shoes of Jamal Adams. I'm sure he would have loved to learn from Jamal Adams before getting shipped off, but he's coming in and he's playing with some fire lit under him. And I think that's so important to have all these rookies get some playing time now when we are, not the most prepared football team. But I'm a huge fan of both those guys. I think Joe Douglas hit it nail on the coffin with those two. And they're going to be exciting to watch for sure.
Definitely agree with Mekhi Becton. The man just finds a way to pancake a big time player every week. Last week it was Frank Clark. First game against Buffalo, he was putting guys on their butts, and it's just a trend. Every week we seem to find a clip of Mekhi Becton putting somebody on their ass. And quite frankly, that's something as a Jets fan that's beautiful to see. He is improving in pass pro as well. That was kind of his shtick, his negative shtick coming out. How good was he going to be in pass pro? I think that is something he continues to improve on. Yeah. Ashton Davis, we talked about him a lot just now. I totally agree there. And I just think he needs more time to, continue to get reps and play more games. And I think he'll get better over time. 2 guys I want to talk about, though. Denzel Mims. And I know I talked about him a little bit earlier. This dude's a stud, 6'4", 215, 220 pounds, ran a 4.3 at the NFL Combine. Kudos to this man, because not only was he underdrafted, and I think everybody knew that going in. I'm still not even sure as to why that was the case. But I'm happy we have him. He's a guy who maybe was a little bit raw in route running coming out of college. That doesn't seem to be an issue right now coming into the pro game. Because the Jets seem to make him more and more and more of an asset to the game plan every week. Against Buffalo, he had 4 catches and then didn't see another target. Against Kansas City, I think he saw 6 targets. And then against the Patriots, he saw 8. He snatches the ball out of the air. He makes guys miss on the run. I think as he continues to get more reps and, clean his game up in a few areas, route running and so forth, he'll be a number 1 receiver by 2021. And I think that's really exciting. Another rookie I do want to talk about, I think he's a nice piece. I don't know if he's going to be a number 1 guy. It's La'Mical Pirine. I think, listen, let's be honest. We haven't seen enough of La'Mical Pirine yet. And the reason is Adam Gase is just stupid. The man can't coach. He doesn't know how to formulate an offensive game plan around his players. That's something we'll talk about in a minute. But, given what we've seen from La'Mical Pirine, decent out of the backfield. He's quick as soon as he gets the ball in his hands. He's not necessarily a downhill runner. He's one of those guys that can stick his foot in the ground and then get a few yards after cutting upfield. We've seen plenty of running backs be successful in the league doing it. Again, Adam Gase seems to be stuck on this I formation power scheme that doesn't seem to work. I mean, listen, Frank Gore at 37 years old is playing out of his mind, if I'm being honest. The man finds a hole and he just attacks it. And, more often than not, given what we've seen from the run game, especially running behind Mekhi Becton, the man does find a way to pick up 7, 8, 9 yards on any given carry. But I think we need to see more of La'Mical Pirine going in. I think we need to see Frank Gore hit the bench. I mean, I get it. Sometimes you don't want to put guys in too fast and make them see too much too fast. Yeah. But it's been 9 games. We have a bye week coming up. It's time to start seeing guys like La'Mical Pirine be way more incorporated into the game plan as a number 1 running back, so we can get a real evaluation on him. So far, all I can say about the kid is he's quick. He can put his foot in the dirt and make a cut. He's pretty decent out of the backfield. At times, he'll drop a ball that's just very frustrating to watch. But from what I've seen in my eyes, he's definitely a number 2 back. So listen, I think Joe Douglas thus far has done a pretty decent job with the draft picks he's had. You can tell he has an eye for identifying talent, especially on the offensive line. And I think that's something that he'll continue to work on in drafts coming up. first, second, third round, wherever it is. He did try some patchwork offensive line free agency signings, and, it is what it is. Connor McGovern at this point is a bust. Greg Van Roten has been extremely disappointing. And listen, Alex Lewis was on the team to begin with. I think he's pretty solid. Fant hasn't been terrible, but he's not making moves like Mekhi Becton is. And that just goes to show you that the offensive line still needs a lot of work.
He's almost 30.
But I think go ahead.
I was just going to say George Fant's almost 30 years old too.
Yeah, and that's why all of those guys outside of Alex Lewis are on one-year deals.
Yeah.
Rashad Perriman as well is on a one-year deal. These are all guys who are going to come in for a year. Maybe we could catch lightning in a bottle with them and potentially, evaluate them as a long-term part of the team. But this was never going to be – these signings were never going to be anything serious, And obviously a big part of the problem is Adam Gase as well. We're actually going to talk about him. Listen, you and I talk about it all the time, Nick. Any Jets fan can see it. Anybody can see it. You don't have to be a Jets fan. This man he doesn't have good relationships with his players. We saw it in Miami, where every player who left Miami via trade is now doing really well elsewhere. You look at Ryan Tannehill, you look at Minkah Fitzpatrick. Devontae Parker didn't go anywhere, but he's actually been a lot more successful since the departure of Adam Gase, and the list goes on and on. Adam Gase comes to New York. Jamal Adams, gone. Le'Veon Bell, gone. And now we're just trading other assets left and right. So you see an ongoing theme there. He also doesn't know how to scheme up anything. The most common thing I see from Adam Gase's pass offense, Nick, and I don't know if this is something you noticed, he loves running crossing routes.
Yeah.
One guy comes this way, the other guy comes this way.
Slants, ins.
It's unbelievable. It's like backyard football, except it's like 4-on-4. Like, it's unbelievable.
It's straight out of Madden. It's a Madden playbook.
On rookie mode. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So listen, it's no secret that Adam Gase has basically been one of all of three problems dismantling this team. And, he's got to go. I know it. You know it. I think everybody in the world knows it. Yeah. Joe Douglas probably knows it too. But when you're in a press conference like that, it's very difficult to, not back a guy up, especially with the New York media for a variety of reasons. Nick, when do you think Adam Gase is going to get
fired? I think Adam Gase gets fired right after the last game of the season. As soon as the Jets go 0-16, he's gone. And they get together. I think it all starts at the top. I think the ownership is the problem as well. They need 100%. To go. Somebody else needs to buy the team. They need to do something. But if that's not the case, it starts at the head coaching position. Adam Gase goes. Greg Williams, I don't know what happens to him. I'm a huge Greg Williams fan. I think the fact that we lost Jamal Adams and a few other key players into injuries and free agency and things like that, he's not a bad defense coach. He knows what he's doing. We just need an actual leadership presence at the helm, whoever that may be, that's not Adam Gase. That's the moral of the story.
You hit the nail on the head, though, dude. And listen, I agree at this point. I can't see him being fired. If there was any point in time to fire him, it was after the loss to the Dolphins. It was after, potentially after week 4.
Could have been this morning as well. They blew a 10-point lead last night.
Yeah, could have been last night, right before the bye week, or this morning, right before the bye week. And I don't know what Christopher Johnson is thinking, because I can't sit here and just think, I can't believe Joe Douglas if he says Adam Gase is part of the solution. Look at this team. No. They weren't competitive until last night, and that was against a pretty ass Patriots team, where they lost 9 defensive players to opt-outs.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Some point you got to pull the trigger. And I understand, you fire Adam Gase, then what for the rest of the season? Man, it's a wash. It doesn't matter, obviously guys played with a little bit of a fire inside them. It's the first time we've seen it this season. Maybe there was a chance and the players knew it that Gase could get fired today. Should the Jets be embarrassed? But I'm not 100%. I don't know. I guess at this point it's going to be his show until the end of the year. A lot of conspiracy theorists out there think that Adam Gase is the key to holding on to that number 1 pick, which makes sense, I guess. But eventually, when you have a presence that's so damning to the team, like the faster you can cut that toxicity out of your life, the better. So we both agree there. Now, obviously, it doesn't just end. The team doesn't get better by just firing the head coach. You got to have a head coach in there, like you said, with a leadership presence and somebody who can coach football to where it's going,
Right.
not coaching football to, 1999. So Nick, we have talked about potential head coaching candidates in the past, and a lot of names are being thrown around. I want to hear it from you. Who's the favorite in your eyes to get the job and why?
Well, listen, just because he's my favorite doesn't mean the Jets are going to take him. Every single player I've liked in the draft, they don't take. I didn't like Sam Darnold. They took Sam Darnold. I wanted Quentin Nelson. Of course, they didn't take a lineman. Our biggest need right now is an offensive lineman, so look where we are. I think right now we have 3 head coaching candidates that really could do an amazing job changing this organization into an actual culture that they can build. I think Eric Bieniemy from the Kansas City Chiefs, he is an absolute smart, genius football coach. He's been learning from Andy Reid the last couple of years. He's ready to have his own job as head coach, and hopefully anywhere he goes, their football team is not going to be good. That's why.
So here's my question about Eric Bieniemy, because there's a lot of skepticism out there. Yes, he comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree, but yes, his offense as a coordinator puts up tons of points every week. But he's not calling the plays. Andy Reid's calling the plays. It's Andy Reid's offensive scheme. Patrick Mahomes is somebody that he's the best quarterback in football. There's no question about it. The Chiefs offense is riding him on a weekly basis. I can see Eric Bieniemy coming in and being a leadership presence, but when it comes to scheme and, offense itself, how much of that is Eric Bieniemy and then how much of that is Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid or all the weapons that they have?
Well, I think it's both. I think just like Brady played a great part in New England with Bill Belichick, I think if we do take Eric Bieniemy, I don't think he's going to want Sam Darnold. I think he's going to want to take Trevor Lawrence. I think if we get the first pick in the draft, we have a brand new shiny head coach. He's going to want a brand new shiny quarterback. Clemson, Deshaun Watson, great quarterback from Clemson. Trevor Lawrence is going to be an even better quarterback from Clemson, has already won a national championship, has been to another one. He's proven that he can win in the big games. We won't even get there because I know we're getting there yet because I'm a huge Trevor Lawrence fan. But Eric Bieniemy, I think, is the guy for the job just because of the fact, look at who he has signed. Who did the Jets cut? They cut Le'Veon Bell. Who did the Chiefs sign 3 days later? Le'Veon Bell. Eric Bieniemy loves Le'Veon Bell. The New York Jets, the 0-9 team that don't even know how to run an organization, they cut Le'Veon Bell.
Hey, man. I mean, listen, I definitely understand. Eric Bieniemy is somebody who's at the top of the list. Nick, you're freezing, so I'm going to take over for a minute. But, I look at Eric Bieniemy, I say, all right, I won't be mad if we have him. I don't know if he's my favorite. I look at guys like Arthur Smith, offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans. He's a guy who has made lemon out of lemonade with Ryan Tannehill. They have a really good offensive line. The man did play offensive line in college. And I think with a mindset of Joe Douglas that says address offensive line, you get a guy in there that holds just as much pride as the O-line as your general manager. I think Arthur Smith could do one of two things. If the Jets do decide to keep Sam Darnold, which as the weeks go by, I'm not sure that's going to be the case. But I look at the offensive line and, I think Arthur Smith is the guy to get that offensive line back on track, not just with drafting players and free agency signings, but he's a guy who actually knows how to coach up an offensive line.
I like that. That's a good choice.
The second coach I like is Greg Roman. And this is more just based off what I think could happen, not necessarily so much of what I like. What I do like about him is he's able to make quarterbacks look good. He made Colin Kaepernick look amazing in San Francisco. He's making Lamar Jackson look really good in Baltimore right now. He knows how to take a quarterback whose best asset is more running than passing, and he can turn them into his stud. I can only imagine what he could do with a quarterback who can actually throw, or with more throwing talent, whether that be Darnold or Trevor Lawrence or whoever.
Right.
I also like Greg Roman's scheme. I do think sometimes it does wear thin, but I've seen him make adjustments when, if a certain thing was working for 5 weeks straight and then the following week it gets stopped and it's a dud, he comes back the following week with a new game plan similar to what he's done, sticking to the strength of the team, but not just doing the same thing over and over like we see from Adam Gase.
Yeah.
My last candidate, who I'm kind of on the fence about, I like him, I don't like him some weeks. Brian Daboll from the Bills. He's the offensive coordinator there. Sean McDermott has coached the Bills in the past 3 years from becoming a laughingstock to drafting Josh Allen. He's a quarterback who's consistently been improving every year. They're surrounding him with talent.
Yeah.
The team is disciplined. They play great defense. Their offense puts up points. The quarterback develops, and guys seem to buy into him.
All about the culture.
It's all about culture, and I 100% agree. Brian Daboll comes from that tree, and obviously he coaches offense, which is the main priority. But if he can bring that type of culture from Sean McDermott to the Jets locker room, I think that'd be a great way to, turn the team around.
Absolutely.
Now, again, whether that be Sam Darnold, I think he could turn Sam Darnold around. It all depends on his confidence. If he brings in Trevor Lawrence, I'm sure he'd do a good job with him too. That's actually going to bring us to our next piece. I think all the head coaches we talked about were solid choices.
Before we jump to that next topic, I have one head coach that you didn't name that I think would be an excellent candidate.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. Every single year, they're a top 5 offense in the NFL.
Interesting choice.
I
haven't heard his name.
He's an experienced coordinator. He's been under Sean Payton for the last few years. He's ready. They have Drew Brees, yes, and a veteran QB, but I think he's going to want out of New Orleans after this year. Drew Brees he can't have much football left ahead of him, and I think he's also ready to get this thing going. So we just need a coach with fire, and I think based off him and the way he runs things down in New Orleans, I think he would be a good choice too.
Okay. I mean, I like it. You see a successful offense for many years, offensive coordinator. If he can bring that Sean Payton-like culture to the Jets, it's definitely somebody I would be happy in bringing in too. A couple of other honorary mentions before we move on. Joe Brady, coming off the Matt Rule coaching tree. Joe Brady made Joe Burrow look really good. That offense was amazing. The Panthers offense is overachieving, it seems like, every week with the likes of Teddy Bridgewater, Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis, Robbie Anderson, RIP, from your New York Jets fans over here, and, the likes of DJ Moore. So, I like Joe Brady. I like a lot of these guys. Anybody's better than Adam Gase. So, Nick, we got to talk about Trevor Lawrence. You've been talking about this man now because, listen, the Jets hold the number 1 pick, and it kind of seems like they're on the fast track to keeping it.
Sorry for us.
It's okay. We're still going. So anyway, sorry for the technical inconvenience, guys. We're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence because it seems like we have a lot of really nice head coaching candidates who would love.
It's draft season in New York, Jets fans. It's draft season.
It's always draft season as a Jets fan. First it was suck for Sam. Now it's tank for Trevor. And, I'm sure the pages will continue to turn. Hopefully not. Hopefully, if we do draft Trevor Lawrence or whoever, he's the guy for the next 10 to 15, maybe 20 years. But Nick, you've been high on Trevor Lawrence. Everybody's high on Trevor Lawrence. This is a guy you talked about before the season even started. What do you like so much about Trevor Lawrence, and what makes you so sold on the fact that he's going to come into the NFL and play really well and win games for us?
Well, I can tell you this. He learned from Deshaun Watson his first year at Clemson. Next year, he won a national championship. During his last few years at Clemson, Dabo Swinney has been able to teach him. Trevor Lawrence could, in fact, wait another year if he did not want to go to the New York Jets. But let's not even put that guru into the universe. But I'm high on Trevor Lawrence because of two things. One, he's mobile. In this day and age, mobile quarterbacks win over pocket quarterbacks, in my eyes, especially when you don't have the best O-line. You need a quarterback to get out of the pocket. The Indianapolis Colts, for example, have a great O-line, but Phillip Rivers can't move right a foot to throw the ball. It doesn't work. You need a mobile quarterback. I think Trevor Lawrence can not only run, I think he can throw. He's got great arm strength. He can throw the ball at least 60 yards down the field on his knees. And he's just that kid that we need. We need a new kid in there at the helm, calling the shots with confidence, with championship experience, with high caliber intensity play. He's just the player, the lockdown number one pick in my eyes since Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck was a stud until he would decide to retire, until his body gave out. But you trade Sam Darnold as soon as you can. You get nothing less than at least a second round and maybe a sixth. Get like a second and a sixth round pick. You have then 2 firsts, you have 2 seconds, you have 3 thirds, and then you're looking good. You draft Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall. Whoever you want to draft later on in the first round, whether that be an offensive lineman or a receiver, who cares? Draft Trevor Lawrence.
So I'm high on Trevor Lawrence as well. Obviously, the man's big. He's 6'6". He's 225. He's got the frame that you look for in any type of quarterback. I like Trevor Lawrence. I still think he is the all consensus number 1 pick in this draft. I do want to pump the brakes just mainly because I've watched a lot of Trevor Lawrence the past few days, just getting ready to have this conversation with you. And I picked up on a few things. The first thing is that Trevor Lawrence at times does struggle with, getting off that first read. He is mobile, but there are times where, maybe he'll force a play downfield. It will work in college because the man has a few trees that happen to run 4.5 at Clemson, but that doesn't fly in the NFL. The man throws more 50-50 balls in the air. He throws into very tight windows, which is obviously a good thing. He can throw into tight windows, but a lot of the decisions he makes in college, to me, don't necessarily work in the NFL. But obviously, any college quarterback is going to come out with those types of, issues, and that's to be coached up. And to me, when I look at drafting quarterbacks, especially now, you got to think about the situation that they're going into. You look at Patrick Mahomes. That man was able to sit for a year because he was behind Alex Smith, who at the time for the Chiefs was balling, consistent, playoff team, great offense, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, weapons galore. You got Andy Reid calling the plays. That offensive system is nothing short of incredible. It's very creative. So yes, Patrick Mahomes was put in a position to succeed from the start. You look at the guys like, Lamar Jackson, the man was picked with the last pick in the first round. He couldn't have gone to a better situation for his skill set. Especially last year, he was really able to shine, running and throwing the ball. Josh Allen didn't start off great, but ever since he's been on a very high trajectory, it's very obvious that the Bills have been putting him in position to become a better quarterback and eventually become the guy to lead the offense. And now he's putting up MVP numbers. My question with drafting Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall is, who's going to be the coach? And is he going to be on the same page with Joe Douglas? I can't see another situation where the GM wants the quarterback and the head coach doesn't, or vice versa. Otherwise, it spells disaster. What's the supporting cast going to look like? Jamison Crowder cannot be your best receiver going into 2021 if Trevor Lawrence is going to be your guy. And then you just look at, you got to look at the scheme fit and the culture. And, I've seen way too many times now where quarterbacks come to the Jets and they can't succeed because of whether it's the supporting cast or the coaching, or, it's a mix of guys who want them versus guys who don't. You got to have an all-in approach if Trevor Lawrence is going to be the guy, and you need to stick with him. And you got to give him a chance with a great playbook, and you got to give him a chance with a viable supporting cast that can not only catch the ball for him, but protect him as well. So, especially when you've got a guy, I don't care how good you are, you're still a college quarterback coming into a pro game where guys are bigger, stronger, faster, and smarter. So that's my biggest issue. And I also do like a couple of other quarterbacks that we're going to talk about next week, just in the event that the Jets happen to pull off a couple of wins.
Very a Jets thing to do.
100%. So that, I guess speaking on Trevor Lawrence and assuming the Jets hold the number 1 pick going into the 2021 draft, you're sold on Trevor Lawrence, but the question for me is consistently, you really want to hold on to that number 1 pick and take a flyer on a generational talent in hopes that you may or may not be able to build around him for a couple of years?
Depends what we're getting back.
Or you trade the number 1 pick, bring in way more draft assets. You bring in that King's ransom and fill a lot of holes on the roster that just has way too many of those. Nick, go ahead. I already know your thought process, but I want everybody out there to get an understanding.
Well, I think if the Jets get the number 1 pick, which we have never had, well, I shouldn't say never, which we haven't had in a very long time, okay? It makes the most sense to take the number 1 player in the draft, which is Trevor Lawrence, which just so happens to be at the quarterback position. You get rid of Sam. There's plenty of teams out there right now that would love a QB like Sam Darnold that might be too far away, that need a future QB. The Pittsburgh Steelers, for example, they need to start building around Big Ben. He's now down with 2 knees, and they're 8-0. Imagine the Jets traded for, Sam Darnold for Juju Smith straight up. Things like that. We could have got a stud receiver, 10 for Trevor. Then you have Juju Smith, Trevor Lawrence, and then maybe you take Trevor Lawrence's best friend, Travis Etienne, and then you got the number 1 running back, you got a number 1 quarterback, and then you got a number 1 running back. A number 1 receiver, running back, and QB. So there's plenty of things to do still at the number 1 position. Let me ask you this, Mike. Let's say the Jaguars are the 2nd pick, okay? And they need a QB just as bad as us right now, okay? Do we trade number 1 to number 2?
Well, I don't see the reason why the Jaguars would even want to do that. And the reason being is because as much as Trevor Lawrence is the all-consensus number 1 quarterback and everybody's board, Justin Fields in the past 3 weeks has crept up like crazy. Yeah. I'm not a big believer in Justin Fields. Just like you have a bias against USC quarterbacks, I don't like Ohio State quarterbacks. Guys just seem to be way too wide open all the time for my liking. They make quarterbacks' lives a little too easy, and it makes it harder to transition into the pros. But it's a very unpopular opinion. I see Ohio State quarterbacks get drafted all the time, and it almost never works out.
Same with USC quarterbacks.
I look at the Jaguars. If they, I don't think they're going to be forced to trade up. They've been accumulating draft picks over the years. They have a lot of holes to fill as well on that squad. I think they'd be just as comfortable taking Fields as they would be taking Lawrence, especially just because all around you see experts and executives talking about how close the competition has become just in the past few weeks. And then, again, it's a long draft process, but I could see a team maybe, like the Cowboys, right? They can't really afford Dak at this point. It's very unfortunate. I feel bad for Dak. I think he needs a fresh start somewhere where they want him and they can appreciate him. And, you could tell what kind of asset he was to the Cowboys because now they're hot garbage. I could see the Cowboys want to start fresh with a rookie contract so they don't have to pay a guy right away, reset the clock, trade up to number 1 or number 2. Go get yourself a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields and set the clock back a little bit on having to pay a quarterback, especially because I could see the 49ers. Listen, they're decimated all over the field. But a lot of those guys are going to come back next year. And I think next year the Niners will be a strong team. Jimmy Garoppolo has pretty much warmed out his welcome. Was never really that high on him. I always thought he was a game manager and nothing more. I could see the Niners making a late play to go draft Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence or whoever, and then a few other teams in between, which is why my point of view is I get it. Lawrence is an all-generation talent, but my concern is are they really going to build around him? And I'd rather the team not rush to draft a quarterback and have him put the team on his back and ultimately fail than maybe wait another year or two.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see the Jets really build a roster with a really good receiving core, a more experienced defense, an offensive line that's a little bit more competent, more talented, and then let's see what the head coach's scheme looks like.
I just thought not to cut you off or anything. I just thought of a very interesting scenario.
Oh boy, let's hear it.
Now that you bring up the Cowboys, all right, let's say the Cowboys don't sign Dak Prescott. Okay, the Cowboys desperately need a quarterback. Why not trade Sam Darnold to the Cowboys for a 3rd round pick this year and maybe a 3rd round pick next year? Okay, they still keep their 1st, they still keep their 2nd, and whatever they have after that. All right. Dak Prescott would be a free agent. We would then sign Dak Prescott and still have the number one pick in the draft.
So as much as I would actually really like that,
highly unlikely.
It's very highly unlikely because the problem is, like, we just talked about how the Cowboys can't afford Dak Prescott.
Yeah. But
Sam Darnold's on a contract year.
Sam's not getting paid.
The Cowboys would still have to pick up his 5th-year option and decide what to pay him.
Very true.
Know? Now, listen, do I think Sam Darnold could be successful in Dallas? Not right now. No shot. They're in cap hell. They're paying way too many guys, and that offensive line is hot garbage too. Zeke Elliott is basically faded away off the face of the earth. He can't get going because the Cowboys don't have the offensive line like they used to. And they're down to their 4th quarterback already on the year. Bad situation for Sam Darnold. Bad. But again, you get the King's ransom, you build the team, you get real competent receivers, you build up that O-line, and then go get your quarterback. Now, listen, I've seen guys like Joe Burrow and Tua come in with some holes on their rosters with the Bengals and the Dolphins. Justin Herbert, too, who's playing lights out and, really play some unbelievable football. But they're not winning games, and they might not be good teams for a while. Now, I mean, listen, you look at Miami, they were in a position to pick Tua. And that's why I think ultimately Tua is going to be off, as much as Herbert's off to a great start right now, I think Tua is going to have more success in terms of winning.
Yeah, okay.
Just because he has the team around him. His weapons aren't great, but they're good. The scheme is there. The defense is phenomenal. They could very well be in the running for the playoffs this year, and it could be because of the play of, Tua, but the rest of the team.
That defense is very too.
Yeah. So, listen, everybody's in such a rush to always get the prize quarterback, but you got to think about what happens around him. But I guess with that being said, we already kind of touched on it a little bit. This is going to be our last piece because, we've got another week of football to go and then a few weeks after that, and it's a long season. There's going to be a lot more to talk about. But Sam Darnold is somebody I just can't help but feel bad for. Granted, Nick, I wasn't as high on him either coming out of the draft, but then again, I was a Josh Rosen guy. So we all know how that worked out. But when Sam Darnold played his rookie year, I was shocked at how good he was from off the bat. He started strong, faced a little bit of a rookie wall, finished strong last season too.
You want to know why? Adam Gase wasn't the head coach for his rookie year.
Then we'd probably be talking about drafting a quarterback last year. But
I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? At that point, maybe we could have had to Herbert or Burrow or something. Right. But hindsight's 2020.
Yep.
But basically, the Sam Darnold experiment it's all but done, and you can blame him a little bit, but a lot of this is on Adam Gase ruining players like he always does, and then the lack of talent around him. Doesn't seem like it's going to work out for him in New York. Nick, I want to know what team would be the best spot for him, going into 2021.
Yeah, I think if I had to say one team, I think the team I would want to see him go to, just in case he does decide to ball out in a different team, I think it would be the Chicago Bears. I think that defense is absolutely loaded. Trubisky's not the answer. He's done after this year. Nick Foles, he's old news. If you put Sam Darnold in Chicago with an already stacked defense and a few weapons around him with Allen Robinson, maybe he can get David Montgomery going, gets a few O-line pieces around him. The Chicago Bears are actually a threat with that defense. So I think Sam Darnold, his best place to thrive would be the Bears, especially with Matt Nagy. He just installs confidence in his players, which is something Sam needs. He doesn't get that with Adam Gase. He doesn't get that with the Jets. I think the Bears would be the best answer.
It's a very interesting choice. It's not something I hear a lot. I like the Bears. They do have some work on the offensive line to do, which has been the Jets' downfall for the past few years now. But I digress. I really like the 49ers for Sam Darnold. Yeah. I love that Shanahan offense. It's run heavy, but it's creative. It's getting guys like Raheem Mostert, into the end zone very occasionally. You see Deebo Samuel, probably overperforming for the type of receiver he is. Jimmy Garoppolo is not nearly as mobile as Sam Darnold. I think if you get Sam Darnold into that lineup with some of the weapons they have, with a reliant tight end and George Kittle, you have some weapons in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Marquise Goodwin and not Marquise Goodwin, Raheem Mostert and some of the other running backs they have back there. Competent offensive line, creative scheme, everything's kind of there in that offense for him. I think Sam Darnold's a plug and play in that offense. And
he's a California kid.
He's a California kid, right? But, that aside, I think the situation for him there is just better. And I think you would see a Ryan Tannehill type of rise, where Ryan Tannehill went to Tennessee, very run-first heavy team, but the man consistently goes out there and makes plays, not only when needed, but also when it's, crunch time to get the chains moving and, he completes passes. There are games where he's going to throw 3 to 4 touchdowns if the game calls for it. I think Sam Darnold is that type of quarterback at this point in his career. And I could see him having the same type of success in San Francisco. You could also argue the Steelers would be a good choice. You could also argue the Saints would be a good choice. Potentially, and listen, I'm just saying this because Bill Belichick, but the Patriots, but I don't think you're getting traded to the Patriots. No shot. But, with that being said, I love Sam Darnold. He came out his rookie year. I just think he's just a victim of a really shitty situation right now. And quite frankly, I think the man just needs he needs a fresh start. I'm not sure if Joe Douglas is going to be too keen, or even if the new head coach coming in is going to be too keen on keeping him. They might see him as damaged goods. Might just be time to move on and hop on the Trevor Lawrence train or whoever else it is.
A team that also needs a QB after Kirk Cousins, the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, 100%. He could thrive in that offense as well. You have weapons.
Yeah.
You have a run game. You have, semi-competent offensive line. They're a little bit of patchwork, here and there as well. But, you can see it. Yeah. You could see it. That division isn't amazing by any means.
It's just a matter of getting the deal done.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Adam Schefter came out yesterday and said that, it's looking very likely like Sam gets dealt for a 2 and a 5th.
Yeah.
Which at this point seems kind of like a steal. He is not necessarily, because Sam hasn't played up to his number 3 overall pick status, not even close, especially late. He's very injury prone. He tends to do unnecessary things to get himself hurt, such as hold the ball or try to run over a safety you have no business running over.
Yeah. And let's say I know our last take is up real quick in just a second, but let's say we couldn't get a draft pick for Sam Darnold, and we had to do like a player for player trade. What's one player you would like to see from Sam Darnold?
See, that's a tough ask because nobody's giving up a number 1 asset on their offense for Sam Darnold. It would maybe be a defensive player, or, maybe like a number 2 or 3 guy. Like, I could see Sam Darnold getting traded for maybe a starting offensive lineman. I think Joe Douglas would pull the trigger on that. He loves his linemen.
Yep.
Maybe, if you like Allen Robinson, we've talked about him as a potential Jets get in the coming off season. He's disgruntled with the Bears right now, so I could maybe see that happening, but it's not very likely. I don't know if you have anybody off the top of your head.
In particular, I think right now we need a number one receiver. I think Pittsburgh's got a few number one receivers, so why not try to go take one of theirs?
You. Outside of Juju and Chase Claypool, who else is a number one receiver over there?
They have Deontay Johnson. Eric Ebron is a rising tight end. He's always a top 15 play each week in fantasy. They have weapons. And besides that, they also got James Conner out of the backfield. So they have weapons. So you put Sam Darnold in Pittsburgh. We take Juju Smith, draft Trevor Lawrence, draft Travis Etienne. We have a number one, a quarterback, and a receiver. Next two picks, all nothing but O-line. It's just nothing but offense that needs to get done for the Jets. The defense holds up. They're not too bad. That we can agree that the Jets are a top 20 defense. We can say that. But anything we do from here on out,
I gotta tell you, Nick, I love some of the takes sometimes, not just tonight, but even in our group text and when you and I talk, just because you live in a freaking dream world, man.
No.
Like, some of the takes you have are just, shoot for the stars and fall flat on your face. So
any other team can make a trade like that happen. It's just the New York Jets can't. That's why it's in a dream. That's why we just haven't seen it get done in New York. That's why we just don't believe it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what? You got to stay optimistic. That's in life. That's with your job. That's with your relationships. It's with things going on around you. It's with your New York Jets.
Yeah.
What else? Right. We're tough. We're gritty people. We know what we want. And, sometimes it's just a matter of, staying the course to get there, no matter how long it may take.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, that's Jets Talk with the Umbros. First episode. Nick, I had a blast. Thanks again for, doing this with me. And I'm looking forward to next week, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you.
All right, guys, we're out. Take care.
Have a good one, guys.